very well qualified to lead us in our CCNP Enterprise webinar today. Thanks, Johnny. I'll hand it over to you now.
No, thank you.
Mhm.
All righty. Yep. So I've been doing this for a little while. And I do hold a lot of the certifications, a lot of different certifications. Primarily, most of them just came about because of getting certified for different classes. So at one point, I was certified for over 80 different Cisco official classes, and then yeah, everything changed. And so so we're going to talk a bit about the what this thing is, this CCNP Enterprise, and this came from the change that I'm alluding to. And so February of last year, February 24th, a lot of stuff changed, and a lot of classes changed, a lot of certifications changed, and so if you already had some certifications, then they either stayed the same or they got adapted based off of what happened there. So we're going to talk a bit about this enterprise thing. So CCNP just in general, and kind of what is this enterprise thing all about, and we're going to talk a bit about why. Why would you want to get certified? What's this going to do for you? What are the resources that are out there to help you attain the certification? How to become, so what's the process of becoming a CCNP enterprise, or for that matter, for any professional level type of certification? What is that process? And then once you get it, you're not done. You have to maintain this. You have to continue to keep your certification alive. So we'll talk a bit about the process there as well, and then we'll get to what Jamie was saying. We have a question and answer, so we'll take a look at the questions that are there, and just kind of open it up to is for try to answer some of those things. So so what is this whole thing? Well, so Cisco certification has been around for a long time. Okay, so just a little bit of historical piece. Cisco started certifications back in 1993 with the CCIE. Okay, so the Cisco Systems Internet Network Expert, and it was basically to validate skill set for support engineers at the senior level. And they realized that there was a lot of interest in certification. They got a lot of people that really wasn't really appropriate for them. And so they decided that, okay, they needed to come out with some additional certifications that would allow to certify entry level, kind of mid level, intermediate level, mid level, and then the senior, the more expert type of levels. And so they came up with what they called the career certifications, starting in 94, 95 type of time frame. Everything was revolving around route switch. Initially, that was Cisco's wheelhouse, and as Cisco started to play in various marketplaces in the industry in different kinds of technologies, and they started adding additional certifications that were kind of revolving around those things. So in the provider space, for security, then they did voice, but then voice morphed into collaboration, which include voice and video type of wireless stuff, and then eventually data center. So as the years kind of went by, then the certifications morphed, and we got different tracks of certifications. Well, at Cisco Live in 2019, they announced this huge change of stuff. Okay, so stuff as a technical term, and so they announced all these changes to the certification and training from Cisco, and they said, okay, on February 23rd, 2020 is going to be the last date that you're going to be able to test on the legacy certifications. Those are going to be the last date for any possible classes based off the legacy, and everything's going to change on the 24th. And of course, that was hugely aggressive. Now, of course, there's things that were going on in the background before that point in time, and so obviously there's a lot of hush hush about it, which was actually pretty surprising, considering how many people are actually involved in the process of trying to transition, that they were able to keep it quiet. But there really wasn't a whole lot of information that leaked out. We had kind of some inkling that there was something going to happen, but we never knew that it was going to be up to that particular scale. Now, as we got to that particular date, there's information that started to come out really as to what that was going to look like. Because initially they just said, okay, yeah, everything's going to change except for this, that, and the other thing, and just a very small subset of stuff was going to stay the same, and everything else was going to change. But what was that going to look like? And then as we got closer and closer to that February date, we started getting a better idea, and we could see that route switch was going away. Okay, so their original certification track was going to go away and is being replaced by this enterprise thing. But and we've always kind of considered route switch to be the enterprise, because as we got the other tracks, we got data center, we got service provider, we got security, so it's like, okay, this route switch had a little bits and pieces of some of the other stuff, but mainly was kind of how do people support kind of the enterprise, government, campus networks, so larger scale type of networks within a given organization. And so they just retitled it then to be enterprise. But they've they started adding more stuff to it. So it was route switch, but then it became route switch with more pieces to it, evolving technologies. And so so the CCNP is a mid-level certification. And when we take a look at the current tracks, the current thing that's available to us, at the associate level, there's no specific track any longer. There's a cyber ops, there's a DevNet, but then there's just CCNA. And then we have our professional level where the tracks actually break out. And so we've got our data center, we got collaboration, we got security, we got this enterprise thing. And so it's a mid-level type of certification. The expectation going into it is it's for candidates, for people that basically have some experience. Like, Cisco basically says 3 to 5 years worth of experience, but it does depend on the person, on the individual. I mean, I've seen people get certified with a lot less time involved, and I've seen people wait longer in their career before they decide to go after a certification, either life change, job change, whatever it might be that might be triggering the rationale for going after a certification. And again, it's intended to be kind of a mid-level, intermediate level type of network engineer, support technician, whatever, typically dealing with mid to larger scale types of networks. And it's part of it, which is definitely a departure from route switch. They've included in here things that are more evolving technologies. And one of the things that they came out with as a statement, and it's kind of like, okay, wait and see type of stuff. But one of the things that they made as a statement of the new certifications was that they're going to be more, they're going to be more, I wouldn't say real time, but they're going to adjust to the changes in the industry. Okay, so the certifications are not going to be stagnant like they have been in the past. I mean, there are some certifications that didn't change for years and years and years. The route switch, CCIE, for instance, hadn't changed. The last version of it probably was about 5 years. And yeah, technologies change, and we want to keep up with whatever those changes are. So they said that they're going to be adjusting classes, they're going to be adjusting the certifications themselves more frequently to be able to adjust to whatever the changes are. So a portion of the certification definitely is dealing with newer technologies, not necessarily something that everybody's using, but it's something that's in the industry as an interest. And so like network programmability, for instance, is a component that we have to have some understanding of. And we have had a change already since February of last year, but it's not at the same pace that they had originally had set. And I mean, okay, with COVID, I can understand why things, obviously that threw a monkey wrench into a lot of stuff. And so, but it's still evolving. It's something that's supposed to be more organic. It's supposed to be more kind of a moving target, really, when it comes down to these tests, to these exams. And so forces you into trying to stay up with the times, to keep up with the different trends in the industry, if you're going to try to obtain the certification, but then also beyond that, trying to maintain the certification. So, okay. So that's kind of where this thing kind of fits. It's a mid-level, intermediate level, however you want to say it, individual that's got some skill set that's been building up over years. This is not an entry-level certification, and it's trying to really to validate those skills. And so that's why we wanted to be certified, is to be able to be able to show others that, yeah, here's something that we can use to be able to quantify my skill set. It's like, yeah, I've got this skill set. I've been doing this for a long time, but I also, I mean, part of it is I can pass a test. The CCNP itself, I mean, since it was introduced back in the mid 90s, has been something that has been recognized and that has been trusted as a certification to really be able to kind of to validate that people that have this particular certification have a certain skill set, a minimum skill set that we would expect. With that certification, and again, that recognition in the industry, then it helps an individual. So it definitely doesn't hurt on your resume. So again, this might be a reason why somebody might be wanting to all of a sudden go after their certifications, is because things are changing. And so we need to be able to, we want to change jobs for one reason or the other. We want to maybe, it might be a requirement for a promotion within the organization that you're in right now. If you're working for a something like a value-added reseller, then they encourage people to get certified because that helps them for billable hours to their customers and such like that. And as an individual, I mean, yes, it's going to help my resume. It helps with my career, but it also helps me as a networking professional, because I'm having to study these technologies, these things that I'm possibly not using myself within my day-to-day world, right? So I'm supporting my network, and if I'm working for an enterprise, I'm working for an HMO, I'm working for a bank, I'm working for some organization, and I've been working for this particular organization for a few years, then I'm seeing a specific deployment of equipment in a specific fashion. And so I'm not seeing a lot of variation there. I'm not seeing all these different, maybe evolving technologies. I mean, maybe something that I'm considering or somebody's considering within my organization, but it may not be something I have exposure to. Going after certification, and you know, we've taught CCIE. Right now, we're kind of in a transitionary state, I suppose. Cisco stopped the 360 program now. They've they retitled it for a while, but basically we're waiting to see if there's going to be another boot camp that's going to come out. And I'm the one that helped rewrite all that. I'm the one that basically created the 5.0 version of the course for the practical exam. But one of the things I've always told people, going through the process of trying to become certified will make you a better engineer. You know, so even if you don't obtain the certification, just the process itself of studying these different technologies opens up your mind and opens up your toolbox of information, of skills that can help in the environment that you're at. And so you start thinking about things maybe a little bit differently, because maybe within your organization, you run EIGRP as your only routing protocol. And maybe you have little to no exposure to other routing protocols. Well, to be able to study and to be able to obtain this certification, you need to study more than just one protocol. You have to understand basically how multiple protocols actually operate and how they function and possibly how they interoperate and such like that. And so again, just the process of studying for your CCIE, or sorry, your CCNP, I've lived way too long in the CCIE realm. in the CCNP, no matter which track it is, it helps you. It expands your horizon, I guess. It expands the exposure to the technologies other than what you're just working on within your organization. One of the benefits of a value-added reseller is that you typically end up seeing lots of different implementations. And so you see a lot of different types of technologies that are in there working for a given organization, an enterprise, government organization, whatever it might be. Then you tend to see the same thing over and over and over again. And so, yeah, going after your certification will help with that. Now, again, if you obtain the certification, then that helps even more. Now, it may be that your organization doesn't care about certifications. I've got a lot of buddies that work for different companies, large Fortune 500 companies, and they'll pay for the certifications. They'll pay for the training towards the certification, but they don't necessarily. It doesn't necessarily help their career within the company. There's no requirement within those companies to get certified, but as an individual, it helps with milestones. Maybe with your manager for your personal growth, that might be something that's going to be put onto the table there to try to obtain these different certifications. So we have different reasons why we might want to get certified. Whoops. So what are the resources? Well, okay. So training obviously is one of the big ones. So going to a Cisco learning partner to be able to attend a Cisco certified course, then I mean that makes a lot of sense. I mean it does depend somewhat on your skill set coming into it. So if you're newer in the industry, if you're trying to start really working on your Cisco certification stuff, you might think about something that's more of an associate level or entry level. If you've been working on this stuff for a long time and you're just trying to kind of drink the Kool-Aid and learn the Cisco way of doing things to be able to pass the Cisco certification, then again, we have different courses that kind of that meet that need. Okay, and so there's the different certified classes. Now, the thing about the certified classes that's interesting about this version of the classes and certification is the fact that they're actually built from the same exact blueprint for both, which is different than what we had in the previous generation of courses and certifications. So Cisco went through an exercise a bazillion years ago with ANSI to certify their certification program. And so one of the first things they said was you can't have the same people developing the courses to develop the test. Okay, and so there has to be two different sets of people doing that. But then somebody within Cisco went one step further and said, okay, well, we're not even going to have them work off the same blueprint. And so in the previous version of the classes, the previous versions of the tests, they were built from different blueprints. They had a similar outline, which had major milestones that would come out of like the business units from Cisco, but a different blueprint. And because of that, then we had a disconnect between the classes and the tests. And so it was really not uncommon that the course would cover maybe 65 to 70% of what was found on the blueprint relative to the exam. And so as instructors, we would have to add a bunch of content in there to be able to kind of fill in the gaps or suggest other resources for that. Now the blueprints are, there's one blueprint for both the exam and for the courses. Now, again, different groups of people developing test questions versus those that are developing the courses. And there are some rooms for interpretation for these, for this stuff. The blueprint is a great resource. Okay, and so if I basically, hold on, I gotta go drag something out of my way real quick. And if I go over to cisco.com, and if we go underneath, it should be over here, go to training and certification, and they always kind of move things around on me, explore all certifications over here. If I drill down over here, all the different tracks are here. So this is basically the current certification ecosystem within Cisco. And so you have the entry level, which, by the way, initially these guys didn't change. They kind of forgot about them. It kind of was the impression I had. And so there really wasn't any change to the Cisco Certified Technician for Data Center for Route Switch initially. Now, there's been some modifications since. They also added the collaboration, which wasn't there before. They also kind of forgot about, there was a CCNA Cyber Ops, and the CCNA was supposed to cover all the tracks, and then they realized, oops, we forgot something, and so the CCNA Cyber Ops didn't go away, and it has since morphed into the Cyber Ops Associate, so that there's only one CCNA. And so here we are with our CCNP Enterprise, and if I drill down over here, it just talks about the different training, about the certification, some recommended training and recertification and stuff like that. And there's a list of all the different recommended training that's here. And again, we can go through a certified learning partner to be able to attend these. And they're taught by instructors that are certified to be able to teach those classes. And so like myself, I'm certified to teach just about all this. There's, I think the wireless one is the only one that was not part of my wheelhouse originally when, so these two guys right over here, I don't think they're on my list. Maybe they are. I don't even know anymore. My list went from 80 to like 30 something, and then has increased back up to, I don't know, 45 or 50 now classes. And it's like, if it doesn't show up on my schedule, it's like I don't pay attention to it until, yeah, it does. But so there's information, if you go here, about the courses themselves. I can give you some links as well to the classes on the global side. But over here is the information about the exams. And we'll just take a look at the enterprise core quickly here. And so if I scroll down over here, it just talks a bit about the exam. And there's a link here to review exam topics. And if I go here, this is where we're going to find the blueprint. Okay. And so the blueprints here, it's broken down by section, percentage of expected number of questions that you're going to find on your exam that's going to be pulled from this particular section. Okay, now you can download the entire thing. That's what I would do. If this is an exam I'm going to take, I've never taken it before. I'm concerned that I want to pass this thing. I'm going to download the blueprint. I'm going to use the blueprint as a checklist. Okay, so you can get the entire blueprint here. But we can also see it online. We just have to expand the areas. Okay, and so and Cisco's actually, when they compile the exam, they are pretty good at hitting these percentages here. So if they say 15% of the exam is going to be from here, it's going to be 15% of the exam. So if it's 100 questions, there's going to be 15 questions that are going to be based around the architecture. And there's going to be 10 questions based around the virtualization and infrastructure. And so as you go through here, I mean, it has all the different possible topics for the exam, but I do want to point out right up here at the very top, and this is true on every single exam, the first paragraph just basically is specific about this exam. Okay, so you get a couple hours over here, and it's around 100 questions, and plus or minus a few, depends on the complexity of the questions. But this paragraph right over here, you'll find on every exam, and it's a generic statement that just basically says that this is a guideline. Okay, so this is basically saying that looking through this thing and looking at all the bullets, I would use this as a checklist to be able to study. But this isn't, it doesn't mean that everything that's on the blueprint here is going to be on your exam. Okay, so content likely to be included on the exam. However, other related topics may also appear. And so that leaves them the room to be able to insert some stuff that may not actually be on the blueprint, but it's not going to be completely out of left field. Okay, and so it's like, yeah, we go through all this stuff over here, and we see all the different things that are here, but there may be some questions that are related to topics that are not necessarily specifically shown on the blueprint, but it's related. So there may be some questions related to some routing things that are not listed here in this layer 3 section over here, but It's related to the layer 3 section, so that's fair game. Okay, but they're not going to come out with you know, you look through all this stuff over here, and it's like, okay, yeah, and we have a little bit about SD-WAN in here, we got a little bit about SD access in here, we got a little bit about this, a little bit about that, but they're not going to come out and all of a sudden start asking you a whole bunch of questions about ACI, so application-centric infrastructure. And so something that's not really related to this topic at all. That's a data center topic. And I could argue that some of the things that are on here, some of the things that they added really are more related to data center, but okay, that's fine. They're here. At least they're known things that we can tackle, but they're not gonna add something onto your exam that's completely unrelated to the items that are on the blueprint. So each of these exams have basically a kind of a core or a set of target technologies that they're trying to test people on. And so the enterprise core is, well, it's core technologies relative to the enterprise, to the campus environment, things along those lines. And then there's specialty exams that go beyond that, that you can look at, that are looking at more advanced routing concepts, or they're dealing with some wireless stuff, either on the design side or implementation, on our going into our software-defined networking stuff. So dealing with automation, and so there's other specialties that or concentrations that you can take. And so if I come back over to my slide deck over here, yeah, definitely. I mean, we want that blueprint. We need the blueprint. And what I can do here is I can put into the chat window just a shortcut to get to here. I'll just throw that into the chat window. And so throw that in there. And so that way you don't have to kind of drill around. You should be able to go straight there to this area. And again, find, and from there, you just drill down to the individual exam. Cisco has a ton of documentation up on their site. So other than attending classes, they have configuration guides that are up there, so you can take a look at, okay, I'm really trying to get my head around how I'm supposed to deploy OSPF. Okay, and I've never done it before. My company doesn't use OSPF, and so there's configuration guides that are up there. They have some training video series up on their site that's available for additional study. Cisco Press has a ton of material that that can help you towards your certification. Okay, so as a resource to be able to study the different kinds of technology, there's a Cisco Press publication pretty much for every exam, and then there's some generic CCNP Enterprise. The Enterprise Core does have a little bit more stuff that's available, because not only is that one of the required things, and so as I go through the agenda here, and as I'm going through these different topics, it's like, how do we become this certification? I mean, there's these courses that are available. Again, Jamie, do they have access to this presentation with the notes below it?
That is a good question, actually, in terms of the notes below it. Everybody will get a copy of this presentation recording.
Okay.
It generally takes about 1 to 2 weeks for that to receive. I'd have to check out whether they get the notes or not.
Okay, because I did put into the notes links to everything, but okay. Again, we can point you towards the obviously global site. It's easy. It's actually fairly easy to be able to navigate. You can just do a search on CCNP Enterprise, and it'll show you all the different courses that are available for the different possibilities. Now, Enterprise Core, again, the thing that makes it kind of special, and this is true for all the different tracks, is the core exam is now the CCIE written. Okay, so we don't have a separate CCIE written any longer. So that's now been done away with. So that course that I basically wrote for our European group is no longer really relevant. So I don't know that they're actually teaching that class any longer. I wrote it, and then pretty much it kind of went over there and stayed there. we had talked about teaching it here in the States as well, and that just for whatever reason never really happened. But the enterprise core now is the qualification exam for the CCIE. So if you want to go after your CCIE enterprise infrastructure, then you have to pass this enterprise core test first, and then you have the rights to be able to schedule the practical exam. But that's true for data center, for security, for service provider. So all of them have a core exam, and that is a required exam for the professional level, but it's also the qualification exam for the CCIE. And then we have these concentrations, and the concentration with the core is how we get to our CCNP. So you no longer have to have a CCNA. Okay, that got done away with as a requirement starting February 24th last year. So CCNA is a separate certification. If you have it, great, lovely. If you don't have it, you can start with your CCNP stuff. That's not a problem. You have to pass the core exam. Okay, no matter which track it is, you have to pass the core exam. Then you get to pick a concentration exam. And again, you look at out of this, and it's like, where is your strong points? If you're into design, if you're into wireless, if you're into automation, I mean, what is it that, and am I missing the automation one here? I am. And so there's actually one more that's here. So back over here, we also have this automation. For some reason, it's not on my list here. My bad. But so you pick the topic that you feel the most comfortable with. And so my wheelhouse has always been route switch. So I would probably, if I'm doing this over again, I would probably pick on the advanced routing and services. But again, it all depends on where your expertise is. You go through VUE to be able to, that's the provider for the exams. Okay. And so you can do it either in person or you can do it virtually, depending on your region of the world, as to whether or not the testing centers have been opened up or not. In North America, we can now take the tests in person again. They introduced the virtual exams back in, I believe, around April last year, because of course all the testing centers had closed down. Everything was locked down. The virtual exams, I have taken a couple of them. My preference is definitely in person. So just, you have to have the right resources at home. If you're going to take them virtually, you need to make sure that there's nothing that is around your machine. You have to take pictures of your workspace, and for me, my workspace is actually pretty cluttered. And so I've got a lot of stuff around me. I've got two 28-inch high def, or actually ultra high def 4K monitors mounted to the wall. I got my iPad, that's basically my clock. I got my computer. I've got this, I got that. And so, the proctor, you take pictures and you actually talk to a proctor, and they're going, "What is all that stuff?" It's like, well, and it's like, yeah, it's stuff that's attached to my computer. It's like, well, can you detach and stuff? And it's like, well, some of it yes, some of it no. And so it actually turned out to be kind of, for me, it turned out to be kind of a hassle. You have to have a camera, and you're on camera the whole time that you're taking the exam. You can't have anything you can write on, which in person you can. Okay, which seems a little bit unfair, but I mean, it is what it is. They collect in person, there's usually a laminated sheet that you use to be able to write little notes on, or to be able to do workouts in math or whatever, but they collect those things at the end of the exam. Obviously, if it's done virtually, they can't. So you have to take the core exam and pass it, and then you pick one of the concentrations. You pass that, the combination of those things then will give you your certification. The core exam is larger and longer than the concentration exams. By the way, when you pass any test now, you get some recognition of that. Okay, and so Cisco has added some additional specialty certifications and such to recognize any exam that you take and pass. And so even though the combination of these two exams, the core plus some concentration, will get you your CCNP, but you'll also, once you get your enterprise core, you get a specialty in enterprise certification, and you get a specialty in routing and or whichever one that you actually pick for your concentration. Typically, what we care about as individuals and what I want to see on my resume are the things that people will recognize, right? So people will recognize the CCNP. They won't necessarily recognize the specialty. So if you're submitting your resume to some larger organization and they're searching for keywords, you want to make sure that you have keywords that's going to match on what they're looking for. To maintain it, we have a recertification process that did change, and it changed for the better back in February. And so starting on February 24th, everything went on to a 3-year cycle. Before that, the associate level, the professional levels were on 3-year cycles. The CCIE, the expert level, was on a 2-year cycle. Everything moved over to a 3-year cycle now, which is good. So that's consistent. With the CCIE, they introduced the idea of continuing education credits to be able to recertify. So you had the option of either taking a CCIE written exam in your track and a different track to be able to recertify your IE, or you could attend classes, you could attend sessions at Cisco Live, and you can get credit for that. And you had to build up a certain number of credits, and then you could recertify that way. Now, what they did though was they opened that up to all the certifications now for continuing education, and we have a couple of different options on how we can get recertified. And so this has to be done within that 3-year window. And so we can either just take exams, we can take exams and courses together, or we can just do continuing education credits and just take courses to be able to recertify. With the CCIE thing, before the February date, then it was one or the other. Okay, so either you take a single exam, pass it, you're good, or you have to build up enough continuing education credits, and you couldn't do both. You couldn't do a combination of both. And so now we can. And so just real quick on that, the exam only, you can take the core exam again. Now, there are restrictions as to when you can take an exam that you pass again. Okay, so if you've passed the exam, you got 180 days before you can take it again. So you could take a core exam in a different track, and that would then recertify your CCNP Enterprise, or you can just wait until you have the availability to be able to take that test again. If you fail the exam, by the way, you have to wait 5 days before you can take the same exact exam again. So trying to slow down those that are trying to do brain dumps and stuff like that. If you don't want to take the core exam, you can take 2 different concentration exams to be able to obtain it. So again, if we're looking at exam only, and then they say 1 expert exam. Well, and it still says that up on the site, so that's why I put it here. Take that with a grain of salt, because as of right now, I mean, the only expert exam that we're actually talking about is really the practical. So passing your CCIE. Up on the site, it says a written expert exam or the practical. Well, the written expert exam doesn't really exist any longer. It's really the core exam now for this particular track, and for data center, and for collaboration, and for security. All these are basically the core exam is the qualification exam now. There's not a separate written version of the CCIE any longer. On the design side, yeah, we still have we have a practical exam, and we have a core exam as well. But they're both computer-based type of exams. Just the DE exam is much longer of a practical. It's an 8-hour exam. So okay, now if you want to use a combination of things, then the exam plus getting continuing education credits. And so passing one of the concentration exams and then earning 40 additional credits for education, or if you want to just do it using credits, then okay. And again, up here, up on Cisco's site, if I go back over here, and I'm trying to wrap things up here fairly quickly here, they talk about the specialty stuff, what happens, okay, and here's the recertification policy stuff, but right next to it, was the continuing education program. And so this really kind of explains how all this continuing education stuff works, where you can get credits for it. Attending classes from a learning partner, a certified learning partner like Global Knowledge, will give you continuing education credits. And so depending on the course, I mean, you could get a pretty significant number of credits from just a single course. When Cisco is doing their big conference, Cisco Live, which I've spoken at, and I actually spoke at Cisco Live 10 years in a row. But attending those sessions actually earns you credits as well. And so it goes through and just kind of talks about the different requirements here for the continuing education credits. To be able to just use credits, to be able to recertify for the professional is 80 credits. And then there's a whole catalog of courses and sources of credits that you can look at, and so what's eligible to be able to earn you credit. So the process has gotten different, and it's now tied to your certification tracking. Another thing that wasn't great back in the older version of this with just the CCIE, if we chose to do the continuing education, we actually had to pay a fee to be able to get them to track our credits, which, okay, that's no longer the case. But I just would take the exams just to recertify. Now, like before, if you hold multiple certifications, then recertifying for one will recertify for others as well. So so for myself, I got my CCNP. Now route switch is expired, so that one's going away. But the enterprise, the service provider, the data center stuff, I only have to recertify once, and it recertifies all three of them. And technically, what I care about most is recertifying my CCIE. And so once I recertify my CCIE, it automatically then also recertifies my CCNPs that I have. So that is still true from before. So, alrighty. So, it's the topics are it's interesting to me. It's like certifications interesting to me. I hold a bunch of them, but I'm not what I consider to be a certification collector. I just happen to be certified in a bunch of different Cisco stuff and a few other things too, just because I wanted to be able to teach those classes, and there's a requirement there to be able to teach that I have to take and pass a test. And well, it's the exact same test that you take to get certified. So the combinations of things gives me a bunch of different certifications. And yeah, so the question there about why do they remove the requirement? Whys are really hard. I asked the same question. So I've got people that I know over on the Cisco side in certification and in training over there, and yeah, I could never get a clear answer from anybody. I actually went through the alpha review for several of the new courses before they were released to the public, and so I'm talking with people there, and again, nobody seemed to have a real good answer as to why they removed the requirement for CCNA. It's like, I don't know. So that's a great question. I would say, so the question is about how much more difficult is the CCNP core exam compared to the CCNA route switch, and I would say that probably 60 to 65% of the core exam is from the CCNA route switch. Okay, and it's like I've developed. I'm the one that developed the CCNA boot camp here at Global. So we teach it as a boot camp rather than the way that Cisco originally intended, which is a 5-day class with 3 days of additional content that you have to do self-study. And so we do our offering for CCNA covers everything that's within the course in the 5-day window. It's just extended hours, and so I'm fairly well versed in what's within those courses, what's on the blueprint. And I would say 60 to 65% of that is from the older route switch, primarily from on the core, primarily from the CCNA level stuff. The additional pieces to that, that stuff is for me, I feel at a different level than the route switch topics. There's wireless, there's security, there's a little bit about data center stuff that's in there, some virtualization, there's a little bit about automation. And you have to be able to, the exams are all multiple choice. There's no simulators any longer. There's SIMETs and such like that, but so you have to be able to recognize and be able to interpret like some of the automation stuff, some of the scripting JSON or XML that they might give you as examples. So that stuff I feel is at a different level of complexity compared to the route switch piece of it. But if you've been studying for your CCNA route switch and you feel pretty comfortable with all those topics, and now all of a sudden you're changing gears over to here, then again, you would look at that blueprint and you would start checking off the things that, oh, okay, I already know this, I already know that, already, you know, so you want to use the blueprint as a checklist. Okay. And so, yeah, there's a question about, is there any configuration questions? Yeah, they don't publicly come out and say there's no simulators any longer, but I can say that of all the exams that I've taken since the change, I have not run into any simulators, and nobody else that I've talked with has ever, you know, nobody said anything about seeing simulators. So they officially don't say that that's not the case, but from what I understand, there's no longer simulators on the exams, on any of the exams. One of the issues that they were running into with the simulators is it required a huge amount of resources on the computer that the candidate was using to take the test. And since they had to go to kind of a virtual model, there's no guarantee that as a candidate working from home trying to take this exam, you have the resources at home. I mean, there's a reason why right now I'm not doing camera. And I mean, you know, it's like we aren't really sure of how much resources you actually have at home, but yeah, it won't even, yeah, it won't let me even turn on my camera over here, which is fine. I mean, you know, it's like, because we don't know what the resources for bandwidth, what type of computer that you have remotely. So even when we teach the classes and I turn on my camera temporarily, it is just temporarily, just for the initial kind of introduction sections, and then I turn it back off again, because again, we don't know what type of resource you have at the other end. And that's the only kind of, and I'm stretching here trying to come up with justification as to why we no longer have simulators. Plus, I'm sure there's probably an additional cost in the development of the exams to have those simulators. I know that Cisco, for the most part, didn't develop the simulators themselves. They actually used a third party for those. And so it could be a cost savings too.
John, we do have one more question in the
Okay.
Q&A from
Yep.
Bob here.
Okay. With 2020 expires CCNA, would you recommend a Python cert to go? That definitely wouldn't hurt to have Python certification to go along with your CCNP. The new CCNA does have it does have an area for network programmability, but it's not Python. It's basically just being able to recognize a JSON script and kind of understand maybe a little bit about what it's trying to do, and more of the the rationale behind network programmability. But moving towards the CCNP, for any of the tracks, that you'll see it across all of them. There's some piece of evolving technology, is what Cisco likes to call it, and Python is definitely it's a hot topic. So having Python certification in combination with CCNP definitely would be a career enhancing topic. You're welcome.
All right, that seems to do it for all the questions right now.
Okay.
I think we can wrap it up here. Well, everyone, thank you very much for joining. Johnny Bass, thank you, sir, for helping us today.
Yeah, you're
Just
welcome.
as a token of appreciation, everyone, on your next course here with Global Knowledge, save 25%. If you already have a account executive's contact information, feel free to call them, or if you just want to check out yourself on our online process, either way, just mention or utilize that promo code there and you save 25%. Moving on to the next slide there, Johnny. And again, if you do have any questions about anything else in regards to CCNP or Cisco, please reach out to us. Here are 4 social media presence. You can reach out to there. And then also on the next slide, you can reach out to, you can go to globalknowledge.com. Our website is actually a very nice resource in terms of answering questions, as Johnny was mentioning throughout the webinar. And also feel free to give us a shout. They can get you in touch with your account executive and get some more questions answered or training paths put in place for you. But again, thank you all very much. And Johnny, anything else that you need to add before we wrap it all up?
No, I think that's pretty good. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn as well if you want to make contact with me directly. Just search out for Johnny Bass CCIE, and I should be the first one that pops up on the list. And so, yeah, you're more than welcome to reach out and make contact that way too.
All right. Well, I think that'll do. I'm sorry.
So there's a question about for the U.S. Here's what I can do real quick. I'm going to go ahead and put it into the chat window. Those 2 codes.
Perfect. And just to cap it off here, everyone will get a copy of this presentation here today. Should get that within the next 1 to 2 weeks. Should get that emailed over to you.
I appreciate it, everybody.
Yes, sir. Thank you all. Hope everyone has a good rest of their day. Thank you.